Well, that's the way it is. But it's okay. It's okay, listeners in Niagara Falls. We're going to be on time all of next week because we're not going to have Dave here. He's going to have to bid to get back on the show. Bid on television.
I can't even pretend to be insulted by that because I can't even pretend that much.
This is going to be called Bid on Television, you see. Here's the thing. Anybody can appear on the show if they bid it's available to the highest bidder.
Yeah, but who's going to have my fame, my celebrity status as a TV bingo caller. Yeah. You're never going to get anyone near that.
That's true. Hang on a moment. How about Paul Lemire?
Oh, when has he ever gone on TV and done bingo?
That's true. Damn, I had you with that one. I thought I had you with that one. Damn. Who's your other bingo co-host? Maybe I can get one of them.
No, we all stick together. We're not gonna, well, you never know when the opportunity comes to the undeniable opportunity for fame, but not fortune on Talking Niagara. You never know. They might just bend their ethics.
All right, here we go. So it's going to be 31 degrees today, so stay cool, everybody. All right.
31. Holy smokes. What the heck's going on out there? Last night it was really cool. I was at the top of the falls there at a bar called Vinny's Place, or My Cousin Vinny's.
Yeah.
And I was outside. It was quite cool, actually. I was able to handle it, but everybody else was putting on coats and sweaters. And I was watching a band called The Mystics. If you ever want to see a good band, Tuesday and Wednesday at My Cousin Vinny's, there's a band plays there, The Mystics. Very good musicians, top-ranked musicians, and well, not ranked, but really up there anyway. I know one of them is a music teacher. They got a singer by the name of Maeve Davis, who is she's got a really good range and really good rock and roll voice. And they have a superb selection of music. I really like the way they selected their music pieces. So if that's just something out there, if you want to on a Tuesday or Wednesday.
I'm actually quite surprised because it's only because I heard it on the radio as I was getting ready this morning. I was getting dressed, and the radio said it's a heat wave today. I'm like, well, but it isn't hot. It wasn't hot last night.
Yeah, first it's got to thaw the ice. How's it going to get that hot?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Anyway, stay cool, everybody. The cooling stations are out on the city, and if you know a homeless person, direct them to a cooling station. All right.
There's still plenty of them out there.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of men were charged in connection with at least 20 car break-ins across Niagara. And the story behind this is interesting because they basically police arrested these guys in connection with different offences, and it was while they were at the police station with for this other unrelated matter that they basically discovered additional stolen property in both their vehicle and their homes, and as a result of a search warrant, and they seized even more stolen property that has come from people's cars across the region. So they reckon as many as 35 different offences these guys have caused.
Did they publish their names?
Well, they did. One is Richard William Ford, 47, faces 8 counts of theft under $5,000 and 9 counts of mischief under $5,000. And then there's Jake Walter Fisher, who also faces 8 counts of theft under $5,000 and 9 counts of mischief under $5,000. I think that's I think that given the spree of crime we've been having around here, I think that's kind of, it's just like, there's not even a slap on the wrist, guys. There's not even a slap on the wrist, police.
What I don't get here is they're stealing cars. They're stealing cars that are under $5,000.
No, not cars. They're breaking into cars.
Oh, okay. Breaking into cars.
That's what was going on. There was a lot of car break-ins.
Yeah, I've had a few of them in my time too. They got they get into your car somehow. It's usually, in my case, because I leave it open. That's something I can't do anymore. Right?
That is something that unfortunately is something that you leave it open. You're making a golden opportunity for some thief. And I found I've left cars open in the past and I've gotten away with it. But with the modern systems, where if you take the sensor away from the car, it's supposed to lock. Although I've never tried it. I've never tried whether it does.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had a battery stolen out of my driveway. Right, I had a truck and they took right out of the driveway, and all kinds of
stupid things
like that. Yeah, but it's more and more right now because the reason basically is there's more homeless people, and if there's more homeless people, they're going to look inside. If they see a coin or something, they're going to grab it. There's also the passing by teenager that thinks it's a thrill to get into your car, so they walk by with their smoothie from 7-Eleven or something. They walk by and they see a car and they test the doors to see how many of them open. They open, they get in there, and they try to take something. It's more of a thrill for them, I guess. But in my reckoning, mostly because of poor people.
Yeah, most modern cars have central locking, but I guess the question about that is that we all know car systems fail, and you wouldn't necessarily know that the back door was open if once you press the lock button.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anyway, so just keep your cars locked, everyone, and keep things out of sight. If you have a couple of loonies in the tray and your car between the two seats, if you have a camera or a phone, don't make anything glaring, because they're walking down. Somebody wants to break into a car, and they're walking down a bunch of cars that maybe in a mall or something like that, or like Penn Centers, and they'll be going past car after car after car, or on the street, and they'll be looking for something that triggers their interest. So if they see a couple of bucks and couple of toonies there, I mean, that's worth it for a junkie or somebody like that. Just a couple of toonies smash your window. Yeah. And so anything that looks valuable, if you have a purse, you left your purse in there. If you left a briefcase in there, put it in the trunk, out of sight.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can hide it behind chairs, etc., etc. Stand it up behind a chair or something, seat or something.
Whatever. Keep it out of sight.
Keep it out of sight.
Make sure that nobody from the.
I used to have this trick of always got junk in the car, right? Because then the junk could hide things if I needed it to.
That's not a bad idea.
But
I'll start hiding things under the junk in my car.
Yeah, with my newer car, with the fact that it's all flat surface, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. Because junk on a flat surface, it all roams around everywhere, under your feet when you're driving.
Oh God, yeah, we're gonna worry about that.
Yeah, don't want that. Okay, so stay safe, everybody. Keep your stuff protected, and even though they've got these two off the things, we've been inundated with business theft in the Niagara region, as well as car break-ins, car thefts, and everything else.
Yeah, there's a lot of petty crime because we have a lot of homeless people. Basically, that's it. You're just going to get that. I mean, seriously, because they're going to take what's a cop going to do anyway? Like these guys got nabbed for doing 20 car break-ins, but I mean, the average person that gets into your car, what's a cop going to do? Even if he catches him in the act, the cop going to go through that whole business. Metaphysical Mike, where were you yesterday? He's away for a couple of days. That's a good thing. That's a good thing we slandered him yesterday. I thought he was going to get mad, but he didn't even hear
it. That's all right. That's all right. The lawsuit will follow tomorrow. No, I'm sure our friend Mike would not be filing lawsuits. He doesn't do frivolous things.
Well, Mike, you did come up on the show because we talked about availability of housing, meaning there's lots of empty houses. But it turns out that those houses are high end. Most of them are high end homes, and the builders and developers are focusing on them.
You see,
that was the American article. However, it did apply to what you were talking about, Mike.
And the worst about that is that the worst about that is, of course, it's not. That was very much a local impact as well, which is why we put it on, because that's very much reflected in our local economy. We know that we've already talked about the 1.3 million homes, lying empty across the country. And, that's just property investment for property investment's sake. Because why, if I buy a home, I can leave it empty for 5 years and make more money on it.
Yeah. What else we got out there, Pete?
Yeah. All right. So we're moving on to Zoocasa says Niagara Region's property taxes are amongst the highest in Canada.
Yeah, they're kind of like the fourth highest in Ontario or something like that, aren't they? So we have property taxes that are quite a bit more here, but I didn't really like the way they targeted it. Like it kind of goes in with what we were just talking about. When they make examples, of a person owning a house that was $1 million or a house that's $500,000. So basically, they're talking about a house that's worth $1 million and how it's taxed compared to other municipalities. Well, So what if they're taxed?
Well, that's actually a bad comparison, if you like, because $1 million home is probably the norm in Toronto, whereas $1 million home, even here, here in Niagara, is not the normal, right?
There is a price. They say the average house is in and around Niagara. I think it's around $600,000, isn't it?
It's about 600,000. Yes, not $1 million.
That's insane.
But again, there is another issue that I found about property taxes. If you were to buy a house down in this neighborhood where I live, the property taxes will be a lot less than if you buy a house out in those new build areas out in Brown and Morrison. No, not Morrison. Brown.
Montrose, you're talking about?
Yeah, Brown and Montrose. So those new builds out there. So some of the older properties, they basically left the property tax, other than it going up the 1.5% or 2.5% or 5.5% or 6.5% annually, right? I'm talking about those prices are actually pegged higher to begin with. So houses in the older parts of town might well have been starting tax may well have been, let's say, $2,500 to $3,000 a year, depending upon the size, etc., of your house. Whereas the property taxes in those newer neighborhoods may well be, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year, depends upon when your house was built, and they're adding those extra percentages on.
Well, the fact is that why is it in the Niagara region we have such high rates? Why is that?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, we don't seem to have any better
we don't.
better deficit control. I think Niagara Falls is not bad compared to other cities, but we still are more in debt than we should be.
Yes.
So if they're drawing more taxes from the average from the citizens, where's that money going? What's the justification for it?
Yeah. Well, basically, they're saying a $500,000 home in the Niagara region will cost you on average about $7,421. And that's about 1,100 more than Waterloo and Kitchener, for example.
What's a $500,000 house now in Niagara is like a sea can with a window cut in
it. Yeah. And taxes on $1 million home, even more stark. Niagara region, you'll see them tax bill of 15,200, whereas it's nearly 3,000 more than Waterloo and Kitchener. And only using that example, I presume Waterloo, Kitchener are actually they're basically saying, okay, that we were higher than Toronto, Waterloo, Kitchener, Guelph, and Hamilton by comparison.
Yeah, well, I still like to know why that is, and it really doesn't go into why.
Yeah.
For some reason, our taxes are higher, and I like to know why they are compared. Now, if you compare those other municipalities and find that they are a whole lot more debt than we are, but I think it really doesn't matter so much about the taxes, how they're drawn in, is how you spend them. Like if you've got $10 million in tax revenue and you spend 15 million, you're in trouble. But if you have 5 million and you spend 5.5 million, you're much less in trouble. The governments of all levels seem to not be able to take their finger off the credit cards, and they all do the same thing. We're spending the money now because it's because you need these things, and we can worry about the debt later. But in the meantime, when they're spending their money, they're getting less and less. They're getting like $9 out of 10, because of the debt and the deficit, and sooner or later it will be 85. The only thing that's reining them in on their expense is the banks. When the banks start to rate them, when the banks start to rate them low, then they absolutely have to pull in, tighten their belt, because if they don't, then they don't get the money, and they have to pay much more interest fees. We're finding that all over the world right now, but that I don't know. And until it happens, it seems like politicians can't do anything. So I still, as a matter of the article, basically, I still like to come around and say, why is ours more expensive? And I don't think that article really explains
it does not. Also, the one thing I do notice in here, the largest decrease came in Montreal, Quebec, which saw a property tax decrease of 6.18%. Now, I tell you, one of the things is that, hey, I'd love to hear a bit more about how they managed to decrease their property taxes at a time when pretty well everybody else is increasing them.
Yeah. So, but with Montreal, anything in Quebec, you don't know what kind of credits they're getting from the government. The government is going to do a lot of things for Quebec. Now, I'm just presuming this because Quebec, the votes in Quebec are vitally important to the Liberals. They would never have gotten into power the last 2 elections, last 3 elections, whatever, without that.
Yeah. Well, the question that I have is about this is that in our taxes, we pay a certain amount of money to the federal government every year, and that's reallocated to the provinces and to the municipalities through various channels. the question that I really have is, in comparison to the amount of money that we pay into the federal budget, does Ontario get out of the federal budget a corresponding amount, right? And corresponding percentage? Because I believe they do not. And furthermore, of the provincial budget that we've got, do we have a situation whereby our municipal budgets also don't reflect the need of the municipalities? So, in fact, I believe what is probably happening in Montreal is that they get more Fed money than they get more federal money and given to the provinces, and more of that goes therefore to the municipalities in order to keep the costs down.
Well, that's the shortcomings of this article, because it doesn't explain why it doesn't seem to have gone on the phone and say, how come your taxes are as high as they are to the region? It doesn't go to Montreal and say, did they get some tax relief from the provincial or federal government? What made them drop it? I mean, it's insane to think anyone would drop their taxes, because politicians are loath to do that in reality. Like,
that's true.
That, in truth, because if you're running your government and it takes you X amount of money, and it doesn't tell us too if Montreal, what kind of debt Montreal is carrying. So this article, if you're going to do a kind of article like that, you have to really fill in the spaces. All it's really telling us is that our taxes are higher than other places overall, but it really doesn't tell us why. It doesn't tell us why other municipalities like Montreal have lower ones. It doesn't go into that. No one picked up the phone and said, how come you dropped your rates? And we know we're not going to hear it because we're really nice. So there must be some reason why they dropped their rates, and they didn't ask if Montreal was in debt and how much they were in debt. And it doesn't spell that out for other municipalities too. Toronto, I think, has debt problems as well. So the rate of taxes that we pay may be justified in comparing that with other municipalities. Who knows? None of that's very clear.
And again, the other thing about this is the average tax for the Niagara region. We're talking about average tax for the Niagara region here, not necessarily, and it's going to be different whether if you're in St. Catharines than Niagara Falls than Wellandport or something like that, right?
Yeah. So I think we kind of flogged that out. What else do we have, Ben?
Okay, so Trump has basically, where are we now? Hang on, let's move that. Mike and his municipal accommodation tax. Okay, let's move on. So there are two core legal issues that were at stake when the Supreme Court agreed to question whether Donald Trump is shielded from prosecution over his role in the January 6th situation. The first was the matter of the substantive matter of whether the court should find that the presidential immunity protected a former chief executive from some measure of criminal accountability for engineering an insurrection. The second issue was whether the delay in Trump's case caused by the court and the additional months it took for the justices to receive briefings, hear arguments, muse over finer points would prevent the prosecution from going to trial before Election Day. And they basically said, certainly it would be impossible. It certainly said yes to. They answered yes to both those questions. So whether the court could provide presidential immunity, the answer was yes, and whether the delays were problematic, and the answer was yes.
Well, it breaks down the Supreme Court has found that the president has immunity for official acts in anything that deals with the Constitution, anything that can be in his official acts, anything, the core constitutional issues, he has immunity. In the other one, he has he has absolute immunity there. He has presumptive immunity for other acts, official acts that aren't really that closely tied to the constitutional issues.
Yeah.
Which means if there is a tiny bit of official act with whatever action he takes, he is presumed to be immune. And then, of course, personally, he isn't. So what they're making the case for here is that Trump, if he takes a gun and he shoots his wife, he's personally responsible, so he can be charged. But if he gets the CIA to go and shoot his wife because he makes the case that she's a spy or something like that, then he's immune.
Yeah.
So he's immune. This gives and this also applies to Joe Biden right now too. So Joe Biden would be immune to anything. So if Joe Biden right now wants to get rid of Netanyahu and he sends his SEAL team in to assassinate him, he's okay. He can't be touched. But this is nothing really, really strange if you really think about it, because Bush and Obama and all those presidents dropped tons of bombs on people. Obama was the drone president. He was the one that assassinated people with the drones and took out whole families with it. He was never charged with murder. It was his order to do that. So anywhere else in the world or any other time or any other person, if Elon Musk did that, he would be charged with murder. So if Elon Musk decided he's going to get one of his rocket ships and drop it right on the Ayatollah's house, then he'd be murdered. But if Biden does, it's forgivable.
Again, if Elon Musk is shooting up a rocket and it misfires in the Earth's atmosphere and lands on the Ayatollah's house, that's not murder.
Well, if you can make that case, and then of course it will go to court and whatever. But you see what I mean? The president already has a lot of immunity.
Yeah.
Because of the orders of Obama gave and the orders that Bush has given and Clinton has given, hundreds of people have died. Under Bush, thousands and thousands. Under Obama, there was more surgical stuff like drone attacks. They take out a family, big deal, but they got the big guy, right? And maybe the Israelis have learned from that one. He got away with it. Why can't we? So there you have it. He's made a decision that cost lives, innocent lives. So so they already have immunity for that kind of thing. Now the other thing though is they're worried about the power grab that a president can have. So if the president, like Trump or even Biden, decides that they're going to do something really bad to keep power, and if they can make the argument that it's official or even presumptively a little bit official, they could be immune from some very, very disastrous events. I mean, they could start wars. They could probably try to maintain power. So you're giving them a president a lot of power that he or she could use to maintain power.
Yeah. Well, a president has a lot of power by definition of what they do, because, for example, if the parliamentary session, the Senate is away for the summer recess, the president steps in, and and there's a war starts. The president is the one who declares war at the point when the war needs to start, because it's him who's got this finger on the pulse on a day-to-day basis. The fact that the Congress is not in session, it probably pretty well rapidly get back into session, but the president has to make an executive decision. They always do. But the question here is to whether, is to what extent executive decisions are being made, or is it personal?
The president here is, I think, is rather dangerous. And the other thing here is there is a clear division here between the right wing judges, 3 of whom were appointed by Trump. Now this is his appointing of the judges he wanted. This is the payoff, because the 3 other judges that aren't aligned with the Republicans have voted against it. This is right down partisan lines. These 2 people, the political divisions in the court reflect that which is in the country. The court should not have political divisions in it. It should not have ideological divisions of that kind.
Yeah,
this was clearly for Trump, because 3 of those justices were appointed by Trump. So of course they're going to go his way if they could possibly be.
That is higher than the 3 justices appointed by Trump is higher than any other president in recent history. Normally, when it comes to justices for the Supreme Court, you're talking about one in a president's tenure.
This also points out how foolish some people are. Justice Ruth Ginsburg, who was I think first lady on the bench or something like that, but I can't remember. But she was well known and well liked because of basically she was a Democrat. When they asked her to step down, they could have put in a Democrat judge. She was old, she was sick, but she did not step down, so that another Democrat judge could be put in place, even though she knew if the Republicans would stack it when they had the chance. I don't know where her mind was there. It was remarkably selfish, if you ask me. That's a strategy that they asked her to do, and she didn't do it. And now the Democrats are really in trouble all the time because they have this heavily weighted 6-3. Now, this shouldn't make that much difference, but in the United States, it does. And the difference in interpretation between the 2 on the same point of law is incredibly different. You would think that if there was for the minority would be close, but it's not. It's far away. And these judgments coming down, this is the risk with political appointments to the judiciary. This really weakens things a lot. And it's a political tool now. The Supreme Court of Canada cannot be used as a political tool, but it can be down there.
Yeah, but again, this actually might still come back and hit him in the face, if you know what I mean, because conservative judges can be very conservative in other areas of law. And for example, if he wants to, there's been a lot of speculation about what Trump might well do in the future. Some of those things that breach codes of ethics or our Constitution, I think he will find the U.S. Constitution. I think he will find that, in fact, those judges will be opposed to him.
Possibly, I doubt it very much. Like he's very, very clever in the way how he works. But this also, don't forget that Biden now has those powers, the same powers that are now immunity that Trump has, and every president going forward from this time. It's a dangerous precedent. It gives the executive way too much power. Like the argument for it was, well, the executive is 1/3 of the government basically, and it has to be very powerful to do that. And you cannot be that powerful without some kind of immunity from prosecution. But they mean other things, obviously. The founding fathers and all that. The founding fathers were not too happy with a single person having a whole lot of power and immunity in their office. the founding fathers were very much against that. And you to give somebody that kind of protection, it sounds third worldish. Sounds like the kind of things that come out of African republics that are held up by the armies and so on. Like this kind of sounds like the Venezuelan president, that kind of thing. Anyway, anyway, what else we got?
Yeah, well, okay. Further on, allegedly, Pierre Poilievre's conservatives have been targeting experts. All right, so they basically what they're talking about here is doctor. This is doctor who's basically saying she hasn't been sleeping. Like the federal conservatives put out a news release alleging that the safe supply doctor lied to Parliament to cover up her own financial interests, accusing Justin Trudeau of the Justin Trudeau funded program of routing dangerous drugs to kids and calling upon calling for her medical license to be revoked. And they've repeated this charge multiple times. But what? It occurs to me if she believes it to be defamation, she should take legal action if the charge has been made outside of Parliament.
But this is a kind of thing that all the parties seem to be doing. Now this lady, I can't get the article up here right now, but she has pointed out that she has basically oh darn it. Anyway, so she's basically being pointed out something, basically, and geez, I can't get the article up.
I had the same trouble. With this. Try going to the review and getting the article through the review. Copy the headline and search for it under the review. You might find it better.
I do have it, but I got a new phone and it doesn't recognize anything here.
Oh, okay. You haven't got all your updates. You haven't updated it all yet. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So, but I did read it. And basically what it was saying that the Conservatives are searching out experts that have been presumed to say something against their particular policy, whether it's carbon, whether it's the carbon tax, or whether or not the economics of the carbon tax is worthwhile or not, or other things, and then try to besmirch them, basically. So they try to pick one of them out and try to besmirch them. Now, but I don't see this anywhere different from any other party. They all do the same thing. The Poilievre does it louder and in opposition, but he's going to get that right back at him a little later on when he is on if he is the prime minister. So they're going to do the same thing, basically.
And essentially, it's one of the.
Okay, I finally got it up.
Are you good? One of the actual privileges of being leader of the opposition is you can actually speak out quite loud about a lot of issues that actually, if you are if you're the prime minister, you kind of go, shh, don't tell anybody, keep it quiet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, I would say that now in this particular case, this lady, her name is Andrea Sereda.
Dr. Sereda.
Dr. Sereda, because she was talking about drug supplies, in particular opiates, and if the opiates, as I understand it, are safely transported, the safe opium, do kids get at it, or young people get at this drug supply? It is presumed they don't because of the safety that's involved here, but she has said that she might think that that's not the case. In February, during a contentious testimony on opiates and safe supply at the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health, Conservative MP Todd Doherty asked Sereda Do you agree it's possible that diverted opiates are ending up in the hands of people they aren't prescribed to, or even children? Yes or no? Straight answer. We have no evidence that safe supply of hydromorphine pills are ending up in the hands of children. That's true, says Elaine Hishka, associate professor of Canada Research, blah, 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 and health. There is no evidence, but of course, there is, do not currently show safe supply drugs are ending up in the hands of children. So they're saying that no, there is no particular evidence, but of course, there is a lot of possibilities that happens. And somehow they got,
you know what?
This all, they tried to slur Serena because of her nuanced conversation. I'm not going, she said, I'm not going to stand up here and say that some kids, some adolescents are not assessing diverted safe supply and using diverted safe supply. Kids experiment with everything, and we need to be honest with ourselves. The kids probably experiment with diverted safe supply. Now, I don't know how this got so unraveled, but they pointed out her.
If you think about this, any system, safe supply system that you've got is going to be subject to attack by criminals who are going to seek to actually find ways to actually divert some of the safe supply produce if they can. To say that that safe supply isn't diverted from time to time would be foolish. And it's not, it's anybody who's involved in the safe supply system will do what they can to ensure that doesn't happen, but thefts do occur from time to time, let's be honest.
Well, the problem here, she's got a program that's Justin Trudeau funded, they call it here, program of routing dangerous drugs to kids. Like that's what the anyway,
that's
the
what
Federal
the
Conservative Party
is,
put out a news release alleging that that London, Ontario safe supply doctor lied to Parliament to cover her own financial interests, accusing her Justin Trudeau financed financial interest, accusing her Justin Trudeau funded program of routing dangerous drugs to kids. Well, obviously, that she's not routing them. Now, this is a big problem with the Conservatives. They're looking for too much dirt, and they're looking for dynamic dirt. Here we have an official, and she's diverting safe supply drugs to kids and adolescents. That's pretty much a lie. That's pretty much a lie, and they really got it wrong. So they're research into this, but they're looking for somebody to besmirch who is attached to the Liberals. The Conservatives have to be very, very careful here because they're looking for all kinds of negativity. And when they start getting it wrong like this, it's going to blow up in their faces. And now, of course, this is an article from the Star, aka the Red Star. So it's going to focus. It's not going to focus on anything the Liberals or NDP have done.
So just to answer Randy West here. No, the article wasn't about experts being for sale. The article was about allegations that the Conservatives believe that certain experts are utilizing the system to supply, in this case, drugs to outside people.
Well, the whole point of the article is they're trying to target experts, so-called experts that may be attached to unpopular or inconsistencies in the government's policy. Yeah. So they are really, it's a kind of a smear campaign, and it would work if it was a little bit more careful. But what they're doing is they're looking for any amount of experts that they can say that are dirty or corruptible or just don't have capabilities in their office.
I think you have to be very, very careful making such allegations. You have to have a lot of proof, and it doesn't seem that that proof exists here.
Yeah. So so in this other article, there's it has to do with the other part of the article has to do, I think, with carbon pricing, and it's an economist. A bunch of economists, 100 or so economists, have come on to say that the carbon pricing is actually, in the long run, good for Canadian economy. So, of course, they most likely would all be sort of very much to the left or whatever. It doesn't really say that, but they point this guy out. One particular fellow.
This is Andrew
Leach.
Leach.
Yeah,
this is Andrew Leach, who's an economist with the University of Alberta.
Yeah, saying that he's been paid more than $68,000 in sole source government contracts, and so their presumption here is that he is siding with the government's position because he's getting money from them. So they picked out 18, and it says here there were approximately 400 economists that signed on to the letter that said that it wasn't going to damage Canadian economy. In fact, it was kind of good for it. And says economist Mike Moffat, who also ran the list. I mean, it's clear that we're trying to silence people. So that, I don't know if they're trying to silence people, but what they're doing, conservatives are doing something a little bit dangerous if they don't have this exactly right. They're trying to sift through these experts and which ones are closely aligned with the government, and if they are getting funding from the government. So if somebody comes around and says, well, the carbon tax is just great, and then you dig into where their source funding is coming from, and it's coming from the feds, you need to be suspicious of that.
Yeah.
So you have to check that. So what they're doing here, though, is they're making that assumption on very weak grounds. It appears in these couple of cases that their expertise is being misinterpreted, or actually or just wrongly reported. This is going to be a problem for the Conservatives going forward if they do not do a lot of fact checking first. I'm sure they can find all kinds of people that depend on government funding, experts that depend on government funding, that will see it the government way in order to get that funding. But that's, well, in fact, actually, that's that prevalent, to tell you the truth.
Well, one of the issues about government funding is that there are many organizations. There are many organizations at whatever level of government that get government funding. Whether they deserve it or not is another question. They get funding, and what happens is after the first round, once they've convinced the government that they need the funding, they continue to get uncontested funding for the second round, third round, etc., and that is some of what they're talking about here. So where people have been essentially gotten funding from sole source government contracts, because at the point where your organization has been funded, has been through the competitive bidding process or whatever is going on, and now you're continuing to be funded, then of course there are sole sourced government contracts for that, right? But
well, they're not talking specifically about sole source contracts here. They're talking about funding, and what the Conservatives are trying to do. I don't think they have anything against anybody getting any money for any kind of research, but they were looking for things that funding that will agree with the government's position on things like
the problem here is that it's possible to go through a whole heap of university assessments and find any number that will agree with the government's position and ignore any number that agree with the conservative position.
Well, the problem here is the way they're doing it. Every party's going to do this. If, for instance, they're going to find an NDPer that has, the NDP, whoever they may have in the past recommended for research and development or any kind of other thing. In this particular case, the first one, Leach, was pretty much misquoted, and they extrapolated from what she said to something that looked pretty bad. So that was a big bad for the conservatives. And then they go on to this other fellow, the economist of the so-called 400 economists. They picked the 18 of them or so that they don't like their opinions or could make a closer connection between them and the government position. Yeah. So these I see what they're doing. They're trying to suggest that the fix is in. Basically, you get your funding, and we'll tell you what you want. We need funding. We need help here. We need a nice government job, and we'll tell you what you want to hear. But that is every government doing it. And I'm saying, and I'll go right back to the very, very beginning, that the conservatives are playing a dangerous game here if they do not fully vet these people. I have nothing against them finding an expert that may be too aligned with the government position because of funding or some other kind or job related something or political. But again, let's be honest, political connection. But they have to make sure. And in these particular cases, they were not sure. They jumped to the assumption that they were government stooges.
Well, let's wind on the clock for a moment. Okay, so if you were to basically say that hey, we had an election tomorrow, and magically Pierre Poilievre was the new prime minister, and you wind on the clock 5 years. Which are going to be what are going to be the experts that are going to be under the microscope then? The experts that
certainly the Liberals and the NDP will do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly my point. Exactly the point I was just going to make. The Liberals and NDP will do exactly the same because they'll look at the conservative ones and they'll say this individual is is supporting the conservative government, etc., 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 and they can find the same number, and probably on the same issues as this, they can find the same number of experts that will support the then conservative government in that hypothesis.
The problem though, up until now, the Liberals have not done what the conservatives are not fact-checking properly. Of course, this happens between party and party. They try to dig out the experts that support the party's policies. In this particular case, they're getting sloppy and they're ruining people's careers. Leach can't get off the phone. She has to explain herself over and over again. The Economist as well. So they haven't done their research well enough. They have made the assumption that these experts are in alignment with the government, and they want to expose that. And if it is true, yes, that is good. But in the meantime, if you are not completely true, you could ruin somebody's career. So it's unethical. And that's what I said in the beginning. The conservatives are going down a very dangerous path there if they do not fully check their sources before they put somebody's name out there and slur them. Because now you've got people like Leach and Moffat and all of them coming out, look what they did to me. That's what kind of ethics they have. They ruined my career on misinformation. They never got it right. That's the kind of thing. And it really bothers me too. Like I don't think any Canadian would ever regret to hear something where the government and some experts are aligned. I think they kind of expect it sometimes. But for somebody to be exposed, that it shouldn't be exposed because there's nothing really against them. That is the problem, I believe, that the conservatives have to work. Now, the conservatives are working on a very, very tsunami of negativity that is where they're essentially basing a lot of their approach, because they don't have their own ideas yet. They haven't really talked about what they're going to do about this program or that program or anything. Right now they're depending on negativity. Now that can only go so far. And when they start finding that they're mining for negativity and wrecking people's careers like this, then they're going to really have to back off, and they're going to have to switch their message, because seriously, negativity can only go so far.
And the challenge I see with this is that it's not so much about any of these individual experts aligning with the Liberal Party. I see it probably as being the Liberal Party as actually aligning with certain of these experts, because they've kind of they were in a dilemma over one particular issue, and they've gone out and sought expertise on that issue and come up with a policy in one particular direction. And like it or not, the Conservatives will do exactly the same if and when they're in power. So wind the clock forward again in that hypothetical scenario. And of course, you'd be talking about, you could be talking about the Liberals criticizing the Conservative experts.
Well, sure, that's exactly going to happen. But the point is, how are they going to do it? Right now, the Conservatives are pushing the envelope, and
I think that's the wrong way.
According to this article, that they're actually ruining people's career or making besmirching someone on their credibility as an expert because they happen to be aligned with liberal. Now, Randy West, our listener, says the aligning was exactly the basis of control and leadership throughout COVID. Yeah, that's a whole Pandora's box, basically. We might have to get into that some other time. I can't really think, but yeah, you're kind of right there. Like you had your left people and your right people all pointing the fingers at
I'd like to explore that further, Randy. I'd love to explore that further, Randy. Any chance you want to come on as a and let's speak about this type of thing next week?
But if you better be careful, because you don't know if a liberal or conservative might be listening and besmirch your expert status.
I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything right at this second, on these issues. No.
Basically, it's like the conservatives are going to have to be very, very careful on this, because it's not a matter that the liberals did it and the conservatives did it and the liberals will do it again and all that. We all expect that. We all expect exaggerated explanations from the opposition, no matter who that opposition is, whether it's conservative, liberal, or NDP. However, when you start to exaggerate your position and then point out individuals, you have to be spot on that they are complicit with the government in some way.
Yeah.
And their attitudes and they're aligning with the government for reasons of personal gain rather than aligning with the government just because the facts they have just so happen to agree with the government position.
Yeah.
So I guess that is the important part of this article, I think. Now, this is, of course, was written by a star in the Star, and the Star, of course, is quite often called the Red Star because it's so far to the left. It sees the conservatives as some sort of cancer upon the land, and the liberals and NDP, God-given rulers of divine right of goodness and kindness and wonderfulness. So now we have to have the Sun's opinion on this. We to balance them. They're the opposite. They're conservative paper, and they have definite and different interpretations.
Well, actually, okay. So I'm going to be talking in relation to the Toronto Star. So Bruce Arthur, who is the author of this particular article, is a Toronto Star-based columnist, Toronto-based columnist for the Star. He was named. All right, here's where it goes on the kind of off the straight and narrow. He was named as the 2012 Sports Writer of the Year by Sports Media Canada, and has been named by Sports Illustrated's list of top 100 to people to follow on Twitter 4 times. And he's also been a contributor to TSN and TSN Radio. So hang on, he's a sports writer.
Yes, exactly. A sports writer. So that jumped out at me too. Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, now it's time. Now the Conservatives can go after his expert status as a journalist in this area, because obviously he isn't an expert, and whatever he says about this is, purely opinion. I'm not saying he didn't research the article or not, but anyway, like I said before, something like this has to be, and unfortunately, it is up to us.
I know
consumers of the news to find a balanced opinion.
Yeah, and hey, I know I was being extremely cynical with putting that viewpoint up. And we tend to end up slating sports writers as knowing nothing. I would say
you know a lot about sports.
Yeah, they know a lot about sports, but knowing nothing outside of the sports arena. And hey, if their name was spelled awkwardly, they wouldn't even know how to spell it, because they come from sports, right? That's what often we slam sports writers with, but it isn't true. Okay.
Personally,
so here's a question. Randy says expert is seldom as finer as you would expect. Absolutely.
I go back to my point here that yes, in this particular case, if Polyev and his boys looked at this particular article, the first thing they can say is this person an expert? And then say, this is why he's not an expert. He's aligning with the government, and they're in this particular article, they're trying to slur us, and yet this guy, he's supposed to be a political expert, and he's a sports writer. So they could do the negative thing on him. They could slur his credibility. Yeah. I think that's the whole point, though. But I will also go back to one of my original points, is that the Conservatives have to be very careful going forward. They're basing everything on negativity, and if they start getting that wrong, there's going to be a reaction to it. So that I'm just looking for. Now I don't doubt any, like the Liberals are going around digging into every cesspool there is, trying to find dirt on Polyev and everyone else of the Conservative Party. Right now, they haven't found too much. And one of the things they like to do is call the Conservatives racist, but they can't do that when they have a prime minister that went around in blackface.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah. So by the time it's the third today. No.
Yeah, I got to go on. So it's
by the time we get up on Friday morning, probably the election results will be known in the UK.
Yeah. We have to wait till next week, actually, on Monday, probably, before we find out what the French ones were. That's
exactly
a little bit more interesting to me right now. Yeah, there is mass confusion in Britain right now. We don't know how that's going to shake down. But I don't think it's as serious as what's happening in France.
Yeah, the UK one is a reaction to the fact that we've had a long-term Conservative government that is now being completely out of sorts with the, they feel is completely out of sorts with the British populace. How long this Labour government will last is another question, and that's just bucking the rightward trend of politics across the world right now, in my view.
Well, I think Richie Sunak and Macron have something in common. They both called elections that appear to be politically suicidal.
Yeah.
Macron tried to be bold and decisive and courageous. If it worked for him, he would look like a genius, but that fell flat in his face. And Sunak obviously doesn't want the job of prime minister anymore.
Yeah. Clearly, yeah, he probably wants to get out of politics as quick as he can. The trouble is that in order to exit stage left, he has to lose the election.
Yeah. So that obviously those two guys made really bad political choices. I don't know how much choice Sunak had when he had to have his election come up, but Macron really blew it.
Yeah, Sunak had choice to go further on. Typically,
anyway, I got to get going.
Yeah,
so I'm going to do the. I'm going to do the. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pierre. Keep going. I'm out now.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay.